Let's start with a brief summary. This article, written by Paul Graham in 2007, discusses how successful startups become ultra efficient and creative in their early stages. This phase is quite the opposite of many people's perception of work life. Graham points out the differences between large companies and startups, stating that startups generally focus on actual productivity rather than trying to appear impressive. The article emphasizes the importance of creating a more productive and innovative work culture, drawing attention to the lessons that large companies can learn from startups. Before we dive in, I want to share a quick note about how this podcast is created. As you've probably noticed, this podcast isn't voiced by a human, but by artificial intelligence. I'm obligated to inform you of this beforehand due to the rules of AI services. This podcast is made possible by our sponsor, Wope.com, an AI startup that combines content marketing with artificial intelligence to significantly boost traffic and revenue of your startups. For all the latest content, be sure to follow me at x.com, Yigith Koner. Now let's turn our attention back to the essay. Learning from Founders, Unveiling the Secrets of True Productivity and Success. Original title, Learning from Founders. Date, January 2007. Forward to Jessica Livingston's at work of jbeyond.com to Potling Blocked 159059441. Apparently, sprinters reach their highest speed right out of the blocks and spend the rest of the race slowing down. The winners slow down the least. It's that way with most startups, too. The earliest phase is usually the most productive. That's when they have the really big ideas. Imagine what Apple was like when 100% of its employees were either Steve Jobs or Steve Wozniak. The striking thing about this phase is that it's completely different from most people's idea of what business is like. If you looked in people's heads or stock photo collections for images representing business, you'd get images of people dressed up in suits, groups sitting around conference tables looking serious, PowerPoint presentations, people producing thick reports for one another to read. Early-stage startups are the exact opposite of this, and yet they're probably the most productive part of the whole economy. Why the disconnect? I think there's a general principle at work here. The less energy people expend on performance, the more they expend on appearances to compensate. More often than not, the energy they expend on seeming impressive makes their actual performance worse. A few years ago, I read an article in which a car magazine modified the sports model of some production car to get the fastest possible standing quarter mile. You know how they did it? They cut off all the crap the manufacturer had bolted onto the car to make it look fast. Business is broken the same way that car was. The effort that goes into looking productive is not merely wasted, but actually makes organizations less productive. Suits, for example. Suits do not help people to think better. I bet most executives at big companies do their best thinking when they wake up on Sunday morning and go downstairs in their bathrobe to make a cup of coffee. That's when you have ideas. Just imagine what a company would be like if people could think that well at work. People do in startups, at least some of the time. Half the time, you're in a panic because your servers are on fire, but the other half you're thinking as deeply as most people only get to sitting alone on a Sunday morning. Ditto for most of the other differences between startups and what passes for productivity in big companies. And yet conventional ideas of professionalism have such an iron grip on our minds that even startup founders are affected by them. In our startup, when outsiders came to visit, we tried hard to seem professional. We'd clean up our offices, wear better clothes, try to arrange that a lot of people were there during conventional office hours. In fact, programming didn't get done by well-dressed people at clean desks during office hours. It got done by badly dressed people. I was notorious for programming wearing just a towel in offices strewn with junk at 2 a.m. But no visitor would understand that. Not even investors, who are supposed to be able to recognize real productivity when they see it. Even we were affected by the conventional wisdom. We thought of ourselves as imposters, succeeding despite being totally unprofessional. It was as if we'd created a Formula One car, but felt sheepish because it didn't look like a car was supposed to look. In the car world, there are at least some people who know that a high-performance car looks like a Formula One race car, not a sedan with giant rims and a fake spoiler bolted to the trunk. Why not in business? Probably because startups are so small. The really dramatic growth happens when a startup only has 3 or 4 people. So only 3 or 4 people see that, whereas tens of thousands see business as it's practiced by Boeing or Philip Morris. This book can help fix that problem by showing everyone what, till now, only a handful people got to see. What happens in the first year of a startup? This is what real productivity looks like. This is the Formula One race car. It looks weird, but it goes fast. Of course, big companies won't be able to do everything these startups do. In big companies, there's always going to be more politics and less scope for individual decisions. But seeing what startups are really like will at least show other organizations what to aim for. The time may soon be coming when instead of startups trying to seem more corporate, corporations will try to seem more like startups. That would be a good thing.